Silent Hill is one of the best franchises out there when it comes to building tension with its atmospheric horror. A big reason for that comes from the locations they choose to include in each of their games. From walking around prisons to exploring hospitals, Silent Hill knows exactly how to change locations that we're familiar with in our real lives and make them terrifying. So on today's episode of Nerd Space Games, we're taking a look at the scariest locations in the franchise. By the way, some of these locations pop up in multiple games, so for today's list, I'll just credit the game that makes the location the scariest or the most expansive. Full disclosure, in most cases, that'll be the first game that it appears in, with the exception of one entry. Also for today's list, we're considering every location that appears in a Silent Hill game, including those areas that don't actually take place in the town of Silent Hill. Before that though, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel if you like the content that I bring you guys. Also, if you enjoyed today's topic, please leave a like on today's video. Anyway, this is Nerd Space Games with my top 10 scariest Silent Hill locations. Let's get it. Number 10, Water Prison World, Silent Hill 4, The Room. We start off this list with a location that is actually outside of Silent Hill. In Silent Hill 4 The Room, you play as Henry as he's exploring different other worlds that mimic nearby areas. For example, you have the subway world, the forest world, and so on. However, the water prison world is the first other world to put the players into a sense of anxiety and fear thanks to the eerie setting of it all. Starting with the concept of it being an isolated prison, you're immediately already deep within scary territory, as abandoned prisons in video games tend to be pretty damn terrifying. The water prison elevates this fear thanks to the newest enemy type that you'll find in future worlds going forward, the twins. These terrifying double-headed creatures were initially victims of Walter, and it seems they are now missing their lower half. But if you thought that meant that they wouldn't be able to chase after you, well then you have another thing coming. They use their arms to run along the floor and even almost outrun you at times. The most significant location where these monsters are located at are in the corridors on each floor, in which they can loop around and come for you from the opposite direction. So imagine you running around in a loop to avoid them, only to then be cut off by them as they pop up from the same direction that you're running in. Also, the water prison world is definitely the easiest location to get lost in, thanks to the main mechanic of the stage focusing on rotating the entire prison with valves at the top of the prison. You'll find yourself jumping through the wrong holes at the wrong time without the help from a guide. Number 9, St. Maria's Monastery, Silent Hill Downpour. So honestly, I didn't think I would include a location from Downpour as one of the scariest locations in Silent Hill. But after thinking more on it, I realized that there was one area of Silent Hill Downpour that really scared the living shit out of me. St. Maria's Monastery. I mean, if there's one thing that I consider scary thanks to all of the possession movies I've seen, it's nuns. Nuns are scary now thanks to the Conjuring universe. So having to explore the monastery didn't sound like a picnic in the park in my opinion. Still, other than one interaction, the nuns weren't really the scary part about this area. Most of the scare factors here came from the creepy ass children, the ghost mannequins that we've seen prior to this location, and the setting itself. Not to mention there were some weird and creepy files that described some inhumane torturing of the children that lived there, and even some rooms that made your skin crawl like the morgue. Because of these elements, we find St. Maria's cracking the top 10 scariest locations in the franchise, but failing to move any higher on this list due to it not having enough atmospheric horror. And also not using the whole nuns are scary element more. I mean, that would have been a home run if they explored that a little more, you know what I mean? Number 8, Lakeside Amusement Park, Silent Hill 3. Silent Hill 3 included some returning locations like Brookhaven Hospital, but it was the expansion that Lakeside Amusement Park got that really received the biggest improvement. In the original game, we found Harry visiting Lakeside only to take a look at the merry-go-round and face off against the possessed Sybil. However, Silent Hill 3 allowed you to explore the entire park, which led to some terrifying and disturbing scenery. From exploring a haunted mansion that led to one of the best jump scares in the series to almost getting run over by a roller coaster while walking on its tracks. Lakeside Amusement Park presented plenty of iconic and scary moments. Let's not forget about the park's mascot, Robbie the Rabbit, a pink bunny stained with blood all over. Unfortunately, you never really get a chance to face off against this bunny, but straight up, just looking at its corpse is enough to make you feel anxious. And when you add all of that to the terrifying red light of doom while exploring the haunted mansion, the eerie setting of an abandoned amusement park, a boss fight against Alessa herself on the merry-go-round, and the creepy-ass mascot, the Lakeside Amusement Park from Silent Hill 3 earns itself a spot at number 8 on this list. Number 7, Artaud Theater, Silent Hill Origins. Another location that we've only seen in a spin-off title is the Artaud Theater. It's here where the thespians of Silent Hill gather to perform stage performances of our favorite musicals and plays. On paper, a theater doesn't sound that terrifying. However, Silent Hill Origins finds a way to make it feel scary. Starting with the setting, this building is an old-fashioned theater with faulty wiring and poor lighting throughout the facility. Because of this, the theater is seen as dark and gloomy throughout the time you spend exploring it, even in the fog world. On top of that, theaters are full of props and costumes that present some creepy scenery for you as you're exploring it. Stuff like fake weapons and mannequins are just a few of the creepy things you'll find in this theater. Finally, the thing that really makes it stand out compared to other locations up until this point is the reveal of two unique monsters, the Ariel and the Caliban. The Caliban acts as a mini-boss for the area, and its massive size and speed is enough to stress out any veteran player of Silent Hill. However, it's the Ariel that, in my opinion, helps solidify the scare factor of the theater. These creatures are essentially creepy-ass puppets that hang upside down from the ceiling as they crawl towards Travis in an effort to kill him. Hands down, these are probably one of the creepiest monster designs of the series, and they fit perfectly in line with the theater setting. Number 6, Streets of Silent Hill. Almost every game. If there is one thing that people immediately associate with the town of Silent Hill, then it's the fog. Even before I replayed the games recently, the only image that I could remember from me playing these games as a kid is running through the streets of Silent Hill with barely any visibility due to the fog and the monsters all around me making terrifying sounds. This setting had become so iconic with the original game that we see it appear again and again throughout most of the franchise. As a matter of fact, fans started to riot with the HD collection when they removed the fog elements from Silent Hill. That's because running through the streets of Silent Hill when you couldn't see where you were going and how close the enemies were to you was an added level of fear that we had when playing these games. Something about the fog added a feeling of uncertainty, as you never knew what would come around the corner. Of course, the radio static helped elevate this fear as it grew louder as enemies grew closer to you, even when you couldn't see them. Every time I explore the streets of Silent Hill after finishing a specific area in the game, I am filled with both relief and anxiety. Knowing that I was about to head into some uncharted territory with limited visibility, with the knowledge that monsters were around every corner, left me scarred in real life when my hometown was filled with fog the morning I woke up and had to go to school. On a side note, the fog world isn't the only scary part about the streets of Silent Hill, as it's only half of it. There's also the other world, which shrouds Silent Hill in darkness with a rustic look and fenced-in areas and new monsters coming at you from the darkness. Both of these elements combine to make the streets of Silent Hill in most games terrifying to explore. Number 5, Room 302, Silent Hill 4: The Room. Silent Hill 4: The Room proved that a Silent Hill game doesn't have to take place in Silent Hill for it to be scary. And it also proved that the smallest area in the game could still be the scariest part of the game. Take Room 302 for example. This is the hub area of Silent Hill 4, and it's where you'll find your inventory box and save room. Thinking back to the classic survival horror games like Resident Evil, you would imagine that this area is safe and sound from the monsters that you've encountered in the other worlds. Unfortunately, while you can't be killed, in this room you'll find plenty of scares and possessed objects that'll keep you on your toes as you get closer to the end of the game. The first thing that helps make this section scarier than the rest of the game is the fact that you're in first person every time you return to your room. This makes exploring it and hearing things behind you that much more scary. Then when you add the type of creepy things that began happening in your room throughout the game, you immediately start to fear coming to the place that you're supposed to feel safe at. Just to name a few examples of terrifying possessions that can occur during your time in Room 302, there's a ghost boy that'll appear in your closet. A human-like monster could crawl from the wall. Shoes could move on their own, leaving behind bloody footprints. And you could even see a ghost of the character you're playing as, Henry, if you look through the peephole while it's bleeding. The list goes on, and it's never a dull moment once the hauntings start each time you return to Room 302 to manage your resources and save your game. Number 4, Alchemilla Hospital, Silent Hill. As we break the top 4 scariest locations in Silent Hill, we start hitting some of the most iconic locations in the franchise. This time we look at arguably the most iconic one of them all, Alchemilla Hospital. This location is so significant to Silent Hill that we've seen it in almost half of the mainline games. I mean, you have the original game, Shattered Memories, Origins, and even Silent Hill Homecoming. But out of all the times we visited Alchemilla Hospital, none are as terrifying as the first game. Something about hospitals and horror movies and games just make my skin crawl. Seeing creepy ass nurses and doctors coming at you is truly the stuff of nightmares, and Silent Hill takes advantage of this setting. by showcasing deformed nurses that are twitching as they make their way over to you, to having hospital beds full of blood and rustic surroundings. Alchemilla Hospital is truly one of the most terrifying locations that you'll find in any game. Something else that adds to the scare factor with Alchemilla Hospital is the basement. The basement is where Alessa was treated and cared for after the fire. It's also where Dahlia began her horrifying torture methods to motivate Alessa to bring Cheryl back to Silent Hill. Knowing the dark dealings that went on in this hospital, combined with the bloody walls and rustic feel of the hospital, Alchemilla easily earns its spot as one of the scariest locations in the Silent Hill franchise. Number 3, Toluca Prison, Silent Hill 2. While we do visit other prisons throughout the Silent Hill franchise, none of them come close to being as scary as the Toluca Prison. One reason for that is because Toluca Prison is actually underground, as it's an old facility that was torn down, but they recreated from James's mind while he's exploring the Silent Hill Historical Society. Because the prison is created from James's fear and guilt, we can see some truly terrifying scenery throughout the prison that makes it much more scary than the actual prison of Silent Hill, Overlook. Toluca Prison feels like you're pretty much in the other world throughout the entire location, as the area feels rustic, bloody, and creepy as hell from the moment you jump through the hole that leads you here. So it doesn't waste any time on building up the feeling of anxiety and dread you get when you're exploring a new area for the first time. On top of that, Toluca Prison features more jump scares than any other location in Silent Hill 2. Perhaps that's due to the amount of prison cells around every corner and the fact that this location is easily the darkest area in the game. Silent Hill 2 even does a great job at setting up this location before you actually enter it, with the Historical Society showcasing some disturbing photos and files discussing the old Toluca prison camp. Hell, it's in the Historical Society that we see the photo of Pyramid Head with victims trapped in a cage, which we learn later in the story that this became the inspiration for James's creation of him. Between the best jump scare in the game, eerie sounds that you can hear throughout the cell blocks of the Toluca prison, and presenting an unsettling fear as James continues to jump deeper and deeper into this prison, Toluca Prison easily cracks the top 3 scariest locations of Silent Hill. Number 2, Midwich Elementary School, Silent Hill. Let's face it, while I love kids and I plan on having some of my own, children in horror games and movies are absolutely terrifying. So to me, Silent Hill's Midwich Elementary School is easily one of the scariest locations in the franchise. While only being fully explored in Silent Hill and its reimagining Silent Hill Shattered Memories, this location is up there as one of the most iconic of the franchise alongside Alchemilla Hospital. Actually, this location was seen as being so iconic that Dead by Daylight chose to include this school as the level that represented the Silent Hill franchise in its own game. Anyway, outside of a small classroom in Silent Hill 3, the original game is the only one to allow the player to fully explore it in all of its glory. And man, let me tell you, this location is not for the faint of heart. Starting with the enemies, you'll find evil, deformed children and ghost kids around every corner of this creepy ass school. Some versions of the game replace the creepy doll-like children with more ghoul-like creatures, as you know how the public is about killing monster children, so that obviously didn't go over well. Regardless, even the ghoul-like creatures were still terrifying, as they were still short enough to give off that creepy kid vibe. And the ghost children, well, you really couldn't even kill them, as they just ran around the room and made creepy sounds as you explored the area. Midwich itself is scary without the enemies, though, thanks to some jump scares and creepy set pieces scattered throughout the school. From Alessa's drawings and a storybook that details the Splithead, the boss you'll fight in the basement of the school, to some bloody piano keys and even a double jump scare in the locker room, Midwich definitely keeps the players on their toes throughout the entire section of the game. Number 1, Brookhaven Hospital, Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill 3. In a previous video on my channel, I talked about the scariest types of locations that appear in horror games. And spoiler for those that didn't watch that video, the number 1 entry for that topic was mental hospitals and asylums. Something about entering a place that is full of patients of mentally unstable people definitely makes the player feels unnerving the moment they walk through the doors. Even superhero games makes them terrifying if you were to take a look at Arkham's Asylum, for example. So it really shouldn't come too much of a surprise to see Brookhaven Hospital claiming the number 1 spot for scariest location of the Silent Hill franchise. Don't get me wrong, I know there are other hospitals in Silent Hill that have been seen in other games. But Alchemilla Hospital is for normal patients suffering physical injuries, and Cedar Grove is kind of a poor knockoff of Brookhaven. So let's dive deeper into what makes Brookhaven the most terrifying location. First off, just like with Alchemilla Hospital, you have the nurses. Except in my opinion, the nurses in Silent Hill 2's Brookhaven Hospital are definitely the scariest designs throughout the series. For one, the twitching that the nurses do in this game is downright terrifying. And when you add the fact that they are faceless and they have a fucking lead pipe in their hand, then you'll find them to be one of the most disturbing regular enemies in the franchise. This location is featured primarily in 2 games, Silent Hill 2 and 3. Funny enough, this location marks as the scariest location in both games, hence why I decided to include both versions of it. Iconic moments from each game includes James facing off against 3 bedridden creatures known as Flesh Lips, and him witnessing Maria being killed for the first time by Pyramid Head. And in Silent Hill 3, there's even a room that begins filling up with blood as Heather stares into a mirror that's in the room. Eventually, her reflection just stops moving when she moves, and if she stays in there too long, she'll eventually be killed instantly. Because of the signs of experimentation performed on patients, straitjacket and bubblehead nurse enemies, and terrifying rooms that feel enclosed and plays off of your fears of claustrophobia, Brookhaven claims the title of scariest location in Silent Hill. But that does it for today's video. Hit up the comments and let me know what you think of my number 1 choice. Do you think Brookhaven Hospital from Silent Hill 2 and 3 is the scariest location in Silent Hill, or do you think a different location deserves that title? Let me know down below. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and leave a like on today's video. But thanks for watching, and as always, I'll catch you guys on the next episode of Nerd Space Games. Take care.